In the small, quiet town of Eldridge, the night was a thick fog that shrouded the streets like a smothering blanket. The only sounds were the rustling of leaves and the distant hooting of an owl. Such a night seemed alive, as if the shadows had secrets they wanted to share. At the Eldridge ambulance station, the clock struck midnight. Paramedics Sarah and Tom were finishing their shift, ready to go home after a long day filled with routine calls. The walkie-talkie came to life with a crackle, breaking the silence. Unit 23, respond to a report of a female in serious condition at the old Miller House on Oak Street. Possible overdose. Proceed with caution. Tom raised an eyebrow at Sarah. Do you think anyone actually lives there? It's been abandoned for years. I suppose we'll find out, Sarah replied, her heart pounding slightly. The Miller House was notorious in Eldridge, a crumbling relic of the past that had become a local legend. There were tales of strange sounds and ghostly figures among the townspeople, but she treated them as idle chatter. As they drove through the thick fog, the light from the headlights barely pierced through the darkness. The old house loomed ahead, its broken windows like hollow eyes watching their approach. Sarah felt an anxious shiver run down her spine as they parked and stepped out of the ambulance. Stay close, Tom said, shining his flashlight toward the entrance. The front door creaked open as if inviting them inside. Inside, the air was stale, filled with the smell of mold. Peeling wallpaper adorned the walls, and dust specks danced in the flashlight beams. "Hello, is anyone here?" exclaimed Sarah, her voice echoing through the empty hallways. They moved forward cautiously, the floorboards creaking beneath their feet. When they reached the living room, they found a woman leaning against the wall with a pale face and shallow breathing. "Help me," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Sarah knelt down beside her, checking for signs of life. "We need to get her out of here," she said urgently. Tom grabbed a stretcher from the ambulance while Sarah assessed the woman's condition. Suddenly, it was as if the house had shifted. The air grew colder, and a quiet whisper filled the room, enveloping them like a fog. Go away," murmured the barely discernible but unmistakable voices. Tom returned, and together they lifted the woman onto a stretcher. As they rolled her toward the door, the whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices urging them to leave. Panic gripped Sarah. "We have to hurry," she urged, quickening her step. Barely had they reached the threshold when the door slammed shut, throwing them back. Whispers turned to screams echoing off the walls. Go away! Go away!" The woman on the stretcher squirmed, her eyes widened with terror. "They're coming for you!" Tom struggled against the door, but it wouldn't budge. "We need to find another way in," he shouted in a strained voice. They turned back, looking for another way out, but the house seemed to shift around them. The hallways lengthened and the doors disappeared. The woman began to convulse, her body twisting unnaturally. "They're here!" she screamed, her voice turning into something unrecognizable. Sarah felt someone's presence behind her, a cold breath on her neck, and turned to see a figure appear out of the darkness. "Stay back!" shouted Sarah, her heart pounding in her chest. Tom grabbed the flashlight and swung it toward the figure, but it disappeared, leaving behind only an oppressive silence. Despair gripped them. They had to run. "This way!" shouted Sarah, spotting a window at the far end of the room. They rushed toward it, but the screams of a woman pleading for help rang in their ears. "Please, we can't leave her," protested Tom. But as they hesitated, the darkness began to club together, clenching ever tighter around them. Sarah felt a sudden surge of determination. "We can't help her if we're trapped here." With those words, they rushed to the window. Tom swung it open just as a dark figure, full of rage, pounced on them. They scrambled outside and fell to the grass as the house seemed to scream in protest. Gasping, they got to their feet and ran to the ambulance. They jumped inside, slamming the doors behind them. As Tom started the engine, Sarah looked back at the house. It stood silent as if nothing had happened. They rushed back to the station. Once inside, they quickly called for backup and reported what had happened. But as they told their story, the other paramedics became confused. "There's no record of a woman being there," one of them said, perplexed. "The Miller house has been empty for years." Sarah and Tom exchanged perplexed glances, and a realization dawned on them. The woman was real, but the house, it was a place trapped in time, a receptacle of lost souls. As the night wore on, they couldn't shake the feeling that they hadn't run away from home at all. The whisper still echoed in their minds, reminding them that some places must remain untouched, because the horrors they held were not just stories, they were realities waiting to happen.